Hi again, everybody. It looks like we're pretty much all here now, so I think we'll get started. So I sent out Kat's bio to everybody, but I'll give her a quick introduction before we get started. As always, we have the question bar on the side, so as we're going through the presentation, please send in your questions and I'll be collecting them, and Kat will do some Q&A at the end of the session. So keep those questions coming in throughout the session, and if you can't hear me or if we lose audio or visual at any point, just again, chat it into the bar and I'll be able to fix that, hopefully very quickly. So today we have Kat Donnelly with us. Kat's the Chief Executive Officer of Empower Efficiency. It's a woman-owned firm dedicated to making energy efficiency and renewable programs desirable to consumers. So Empower is a nationally recognized company that uses behavior and culture change science to positively impact social issues and create lasting results. And we're really, really lucky to have Kat with us here today. She's a nationally recognized behavior change expert with 25 years of professional experience managing regional projects, mobilizing community support, providing market research, as well as wrangling large data sets and teams. So really excited to have you here today, Kat. Thank you for joining CivicSpark, and I'll pass it over to you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. So can you guys hear me okay? I guess somebody needs to chat. Kristen will let her know.
You're coming through clear.
Okay, great. Thank you. So good morning. I'm extremely happy to be here, and I'm excited about the mission that we all share together and what we're all trying to achieve, and especially what you're doing at CivicSpark. So congratulations for that, and thank you for that hard work. I know that sometimes it can be a little daunting and frustrating, but we're making progress, and so it's fun to do that together. So today I'm here to talk about engaging customers with community-based energy efficiency programs, and specifically focused a little bit on marketing and outreach approaches, but there was a long list of asks for this presentation. So hopefully I get to them. If not, that's what Q&A will be for. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm a trained engineer, and I'm going to admit to you that it took me a while to understand that driving widespread energy efficiency requires really reaching customers in social and behavioral ways. I started learning this at my career at SANDAG, which is the San Diego Metropolitan Planning Organization, that if I really wanted to make progress on my large planning projects, I had to build up and manage these complex networks of social relationships. I had to foster this group consensus. I had to convince people that they wanted to ride transit or nothing would get done. A couple years later, I was into my research during my degree at MIT in complex engineering systems, and I started wondering as I was looking at all these technologies and thinking about, okay, great, let's do distributed generation across the nation. I started going, well, wait a minute, who's going to adopt this technology? Who's taking care of the end user? How are we going to make this happen? Because it's really about the people. And here I was very focused on the technology. So I registered for a class in the Sloan School of Business called Consumer Behavior, and it was taught by Dan Ariely, who's, if you haven't read his book, Predictably Irrational, and his follow-on books, I highly recommend it. From that very, very, very first lecture, I was hooked. I'm like, okay, I get it now. I started realizing that in addition to these technology, policy, and business management systems, which are all very important, that it was extremely important to bring in the social science for driving our success going forward in mitigating climate change, adapting to climate change, and getting people to be more mindful and efficient about how they use our Earth's precious resources. So our team at Empower Efficiency, who are we? We're a diverse team. We believe in drawing from findings in the fields of psychology, sociology, behavioral economics, decision science, network science, collective intelligence. You get the idea. Also engineering. I'm not going to let that fall by the wayside. And we believe that diversity is essential for running successful culture change campaigns. And this variation in all of these different sciences that we use and methodologies that we use, as well as the people and the stakeholders that we coordinate with, all inspire innovation because we all look at the problems and the solutions from different viewpoints. So in our minds, there are three key aspects to our success. The first is empowering customers and communities. And why is this? People might be confused about why their utility is trying to sell them less energy. I'm skeptical about it. I'm sure many of you are, especially in California. They may think they've already done all that they can do. That's another problem we run into when we're talking to folks. They're like, yeah, I've done all I can do. It's not me, it's everyone else. But what happens is that skepticism starts to dissipate when the message is delivered from within their social networks using core value language that they can relate to. So what we do is we empower these third-party trusted messengers. And in this way, we can more easily overcome the barriers to participation and to getting them to do not only what we want them to do, but what they want to do as well, because these are their core values that we're listening to. That leads into the next point, overcoming barriers. You know, we have to spend a lot of time listening to people to get a really solid understanding of what messages resonate with them, what are the different target markets. We at Empower, we use a process called Test, Learn, Adapt, and it's supported by rigorous and real-time data collection, analysis, reporting, and especially transparency and feedback. It's very important. And this continuous analysis allows us to quickly correct our behavioral messaging, our outreach campaigns, our overall program designs, and our approaches. And we do this quickly in real time. Third, we simplify this customer sales pipeline or the customer journey or whatever you want to call it, the actions that we want the customers to take. We make it easy for the customers to enter into the program because, as you know, talking to folks, they're all at different stages of readiness. You know, some people are ready to just jump right in and others are skeptical. They need to understand what we're asking and why. We also make it easy for them to later take additional steps on this road to a future of more efficient use of energy and more cost-effective savings. So this allows for this seamless program delivery because we pay close attention to all the partners, including and especially the customers, the community. We also, and I don't know how involved you get in this, but we listen to the energy contractors, the utilities, the regulators, and we bring this all together. So one of the things I felt was important during this webinar to talk about is to address three key questions during my short time with you. So what are these? The first one is, what makes engagement partnerships successful? And before we can understand this, I want to touch a little bit upon the barriers associated with engaging partners. So the first barrier is hard, discovering the right partners, because we know there are regional similarities and there are even some similarities across the country, but each community's social fabric can be quite different. So, for example, many programs have connected to organizations that I would classify as early adopters, such as environmental groups, climate groups. And as I mentioned a minute ago, they often believe they've done as much as they can. And despite this excitement to sign on, they tend to underperform compared to other groups. So in one community, when we were working on the Neighbor-to-Neighbor Energy Challenge, we were falling short of our goals early in the program. So we thought, what are we going to do? We regrouped with our community stakeholders to better understand the existing social connections. What were we missing in the social fabric? And you might imagine that we were surprised to learn that the most influential group in this community was the Horse Commission. Of all things, in a million years we never would have thought of this. But going back to the stakeholders and asking them, who should we be talking to? It rose right to the top. So part of that commission included the town's most influential trusted messenger, the Horse Commissioner himself. Okay, again, surprising. But after we engaged with him and his commission, our program results began to improve dramatically. This is really only part of mobilizing your champions. So we've seen a lot of examples where the communication to the partners falls short, and it's detrimental to maintaining momentum. So like any relationship, when the communication and the trust breaks down, the partnership flounders. So it's very important to get over this barrier. The third barrier, and maybe the toughest one for many of the programs that we work on, and it may or may not apply to you, but it's this utility releasing and delegating responsibility, even picking up an approach of having a neutral third-party administrator, which is what we try to do with our programs, but we're not always successful when we're working in the utility world. So it's crucial for us as the third-party administrator and for our engaged partners and our volunteers to own the program and have permission to deliver it in their own style as a trusted third party. This can be as simple as allowing a municipality to quickly send a co-branded letter to their constituents without getting bogged down in language approval. It also includes allowing partners to customize approaches to meet their own needs. So we give them the toolkits, and then we know that they're going to customize it based on what their needs are. And we want that. And we want to then come back later and improve those toolkits based on what we've learned from them. So the fourth barrier builds on the third, and this is facilitating responsibility. This is equally detrimental if we hand over a program and we just walk away. And we compared the outcomes of a community-based limited time solar program in two similar communities. One received marketing and outreach materials and a training toolkit, and the other received the toolkit and all of that, but with ongoing but limited support. The ones without support floundered, while those with support flourished. So we often talk about having our campaign handholder or facilitator. We have to hold the hand of the customers. We also have to hold the hand of our partners and our volunteers that we want to do our programs for us. This final barrier, I don't know how much you're involved in this, but this one's extremely, extremely important if you're trying to get any kind of home upgrades accomplished inside of people's homes, and it often gets overlooked, but it's extremely necessary to support the contractor. This one seems obvious now, but it caught us off guard several years ago because all too often we just hand over our leads to the contractor and then they're left to manage the customer journey on their own. And I can give a lot of examples of my experience in Energy Upgrade California because I've contacted contractor after contractor and never even received a call back. So as you can imagine, I have a newly purchased home. I have efficiency on the brain. I'm obsessed with this stuff. I'm really motivated to complete energy upgrades, and still my home remains in desperate need of whole home energy upgrades. Why? Because nobody's supporting the contractors to help them support me through my journey. All right, so let's switch gears to talk about, well, what does make engagement partnerships successful? And I'll discuss some of the solutions to each one of these barriers. This is one of the pieces I think that you were interested in, and this is the idea of discovering the right partners. What we do at Empower Efficiency is we conduct rigorous pre-programmed design research that we call community asset mapping. And it's diving into the weeds of the community. It's figuring out who the market is, who are the partners, conducting detailed analysis to identify who, what, where, why, how to connect to the social, the existing social network, right? We're not trying to create our own social network. We're trying to tap into what's there already. So we do this research to provide a framework for our marketing and outreach. Then we take that framework out to the community and we listen carefully to their reactions. What are their comments, their input, their opinions of the local leaders, the volunteers, the local organizations, and we facilitate this collaborative process of co-designing our outreach approach to the social fabric. This provides a much stronger starting point for learning how to best disseminate throughout the community. Secondly, mobilizing your champions. You know, we search in all of our programs, we search for our core values to mobilize our champions. So just going to give you one example. In one of our successful faith-based programs, this one flourished because they had a strong motivation to not only save money for the church itself, but for their parsonages and their members. And one of their core values was environmental stewardship. So we had that same core value. And so what we did was we co-designed messaging that resonated for them. And then we asked them to roll it out. And they used a multi-touch campaign through their existing channels where the preacher spoke about it from the pulpit. The volunteer committee members led by example and kicked off the campaign by sharing their own personal experiences in congregation-wide letter. So that was really very powerful, that letter. They also promoted the program through other existing channels that they had, such as their email, their bulletin boards, their handouts, their workshops, and then even an interactive display that was made by the children. And for this partner and many of our other partners in the Neighbor to Neighbor Energy Challenge, the icing on the cake was that they raised $25 for each time one of their members completed a home energy audit. And then they reinvested that incentive into energy upgrade for the church buildings. I'm only going to touch quickly on this one because I don't think that this is so much of a problem, but it's this idea of letting go of control and letting the partners be motivated to mobilize their social network in the way that they do. What this graphic is it's a picture of the Smart Energy Now program that Duke Energy ran, and later they were smart enough to release ownership to Envision Charlotte. And you can see the Duke Energy logo is very grayed out in the bottom of the screen, and so they're barely even acknowledging that this is a Duke Energy program. It really looks like it's Envision Charlotte. It looks like it's all about the community, and that's very, very important that it's community owned, it's community embraced. Facilitating responsibility. So this is often underused but crucial step in facilitating success. So the partners your volunteers do eventually need to learn how to implement the marketing and outreach campaigns on their own. This is a complicated process. So we need to give them training in a wide variety of topics, from Behavior 101 to mobilizing volunteers, down to the details of how to write a press release or run a neighborhood canvas. I mean, there's a lot. They also need customizable material templates as well as achievable but very ambitious goals. It's important to provide this ongoing and regular debrief meetings to help the partners stay the course, to check in with them, and then to provide recognition and celebration of their milestones and achievements. So this step, facilitating responsibility, provides a focus on continuous partnership engagement, which does increase program cost effectiveness and results. Okay, so this one, again, may or may not be one that you are involved in directly, but again, it's extremely important to support the contractors. Just remember my Energy Upgrade California experience, where I'm missing out on potential energy savings, and so is the state on climate impact, on climate action impact. So this program success requires us as program administrators. What we do is we support the contractors. We provide them with a tracking database, with best practice guides and training, with business advising services, with continuous oversight. We build in goals, we develop performance dashboards, and then we quality control them. What's happening with each customer through weekly goal and progress meetings, a dedicated energy advisory staff, and monthly in-person peer exchange meetings, so they can share amongst each other what's working and what's not working. Okay. Moving to the next question, I'd like to explore about why partnerships are effective. And the number one reason is because 99.9% of our decisions, as much as we like to think of ourselves as rational, very rational in things that we do, they're ruled by social, cultural, and emotional factors. I cannot emphasize that enough. We like to think of ourselves as rational. 0.1% of our brain is the conscious brain. 99.9% of our brain is subconscious. So if you think about it this way, that's as if 10,000 movies are playing in the background. We're not even aware of them. So we've got it, we as program implementers, as activists, we've got to get in there to that subconscious brain, to those social, cultural, and emotional reasons why people are doing things. So sorry to belabor that point, but if you only walk away with one thing today, that is the thing you should walk away with. Okay, so we're social creatures. Quite simply, we do things that other people do. You know this: fads, trends, fashion, and even the diffusion curve. Roger Everett's diffusion curve. If you don't know that, you should get to know that from the early adopters on. They all illustrate this principle. We've seen the power of word of mouth in all of our programs, where we can track who's referring who to the program, and we can map the program's social fabric and how the participation spreads to the communities. So a program can spread quickly if you have the right connected champions on your side and you're focusing on the social aspects of it. So what else about this? This cartoon is a fun cartoon. This is from 1 year into implementation of the Neighbor to Neighbor Energy Challenge. And we started hearing from people. Literally, we see you everywhere, so we just had to sign up. And why is this? This is because we were everywhere and we were using our trusted messengers. And what is a trusted messenger? It's someone that I would turn to for advice for different topics. So for some people, that's the Kiwanis Club. For others, maybe it's the city. For others, it's a specific person. So these trusted messengers and community partners, they make the best salespeople simply because they're a trusted source. In one of our communities, we had a local politician that invited the press to attend his own personal home energy upgrade. This led to a lot of free publicity, which we call earned media. This is when there's a story in the newspaper. This cartoon is an example of some earned media. We didn't pay for this. It was just a result of what we were doing in the community. So it led to free publicity. It kicked off our campaign, and it ended with hundreds of program inquiries. So by using him, this politician, as our trusted messenger, combined with this earned media, which is also a trusted messenger because it's a trusted communication channel, the call to action reached the entire community. So it was pretty powerful and pretty effective. Okay, so we've covered the 2 social principles about why partnerships are effective at activating new customers. Let's turn to the internal motivation. And although not everyone cares about climate change, everyone has core values that we can tap into. So thinking back to that church partnership example, they were motivated not only by saving money for their business and their members, but also from a respect for the environment and the desire to leave a healthier environment for their children. People like me, I've had it ingrained since childhood. I'm motivated because I feel a personal responsibility coupled with this inert aversion to waste. I just cannot stand to waste. If I see a light on that doesn't need to be on, until I can turn it off, I don't feel right. So the point here is to stay true to your call to action, but find that emotional hook that touches your target market. And you want to get to that target market's what's in it for me factor. So for me, it's the personal responsibility and the aversion to waste. What's in it for other people? You have to listen to them and tap into their core values. Remember, and say it again, 99.9% of what we do is in the subconscious brain. It's our decision-making processes are ruled by social, cultural, and emotional factors. All right, the third question here. How are partnerships changing customer engagement? And when I originally wrote this presentation, this part of it, I wrote it from the perspective of the utility, but I think it's pretty important and applies to what we're doing now. So customer engagement is changing dramatically. It costs over 6 times more to get a new customer than it does to keep a current one. And the utilities are in that space right now, but when you put that in line with what you're doing, it's this idea of getting the customer to take an action, another action, another action. That's where you're starting. That's where you're trying to go with this because it's so much more cost effective to reach out to that existing customer. So how do we do this? We do this in 3 ways. We reach them where they're already going, including leveraging the local partners. We use channels that they already use, and we're not trying to force them into one communication channel. So we're not creating an app where they have to go and do something new. We're getting them where they're already communicating. And then we continuously engage them to retain them as a lifetime customer. Oops, I forgot that one thing here. So I think there are 5 engagement partnerships that need to be fostered to change customer engagement. So first is the community, which is the meat of this presentation so far. It includes local partners, the trusted messengers, as well as the customers that receive the call to action. Second, and I've already spoken about this, but it's holding up the contractor network. So when we found that they embraced an active partnership, both contributing to, so providing us information, and benefiting from the engagement. Just throwing out a stat here, according to the White House Office of Consumer Affairs, negative business interactions are spread twice as quickly as positive ones. And people have a lot of negative business interactions with contractors. So that's why we address it. Customers, they make up important partnerships too, perhaps the most important. We want to turn happy experiences into referrals, and we want these referrals to dig into each customer's social network. This is really how things go viral. The testimonials on the screen were used to promote the messages that people just like me are taking action. And we hear about this all the time, so we had to take action too. Here's another stat for you. Loyal customers are worth up to 10 times as much as their first purchase. And as I mentioned, it takes 6 times more to get a new customer than it does to keep an existing customer. So what's happening is utilities and program administrators are beginning to embrace a new form of partnership engagement, one where the partners and the customers are central, and they're promoting utility programs seamlessly and making them easy for their customer. But guess what? We're not there today. We're at a crossroads where utilities have the opportunity to embrace these partners, But the other road, if they don't, doesn't look as promising to me. What we're seeing here today, I'm currently working on 2 separate projects in California where the cities want to break away from the investor-owned utilities. Counties across California are adopting community choice aggregation, where they'll purchase and sell renewable power separate from the utility. We're seeing more and more of this across the country. And if I were the utility, I wouldn't want to be left out of this mix. At the same time, our customer energy needs are changing. Customers are embracing electric vehicles, solar panels, and even storage in some cases. So there's this opportunity to embrace new energy technologies and services, but the customers are moving fast compared to the utility companies. And from our perspective, I don't want us to lose sight of where are the customers going and what do they want, and how can we embrace this continuum from behavior change to technology, because guess what, it is a continuum, and even adopting technology requires behavior change, so we can never lose sight of that. Finally, the last one are the regulators. And I throw this one in here because I think it's important for us to think about the big picture here. I see 3 main ways to engage the regulatory community. First, by sharing a vision of data transparency, such as community leaderboards, dashboards, performance updates. We spearheaded these important data transparency initiatives in Connecticut. We saw an increase in program cost effectiveness, as well as we saw some market transformation and innovation. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Second is embracing a new form of cost effectiveness metrics that take into account the lifetime value of the customer. So according to the White House Office of Consumer Affairs, the probability of selling to an existing customer is 60 to 70%, while selling to a new customer is only 5 to 20%. So we really want to stretch our funds in the smartest way possible, sell to these existing customers, and ask them to sell to the new customers, because now they're bought into it and they're the best social messenger we could ask for. Third is this idea of financing a culture of zero net energy. This is about funding behavior and social science approaches in a more direct manner and using longer funding cycles. It takes a lot of time to build up program momentum. Okay. Finally, on this piece of the presentation that I'm going to move into a second half, I would like to present a simple way forward for leveraging partnerships to change the way we engage customers. The first one is leading from the top. And this includes the regulators setting policies and funding the solutions, utilities modifying how they approach their customers in a way that benefits their future bottom line, us working with municipalities and other leaders, which I know CivicSpark is doing, to make sure that we're starting from the top. But at the same time, we have to model these behaviors from the middle. And this is where us, the outreach teams, and then our trusted community partners lead the way. And this is, again, it means handing off responsibility and supporting our local organizations and our energy champions, our sustainability champions. And finally, this is mobilizing from the bottom. That's the third piece. And here we're talking about engaging the grassroots movements and tapping into their existing social networks. We've got to make sure we're doing all 3 as we move forward. Okay, I'm going to take a breath in about 15 more minutes, and then we'll move into Q&A. So in this second half of the presentation, I'm going to focus on community-based energy efficiency program basics, some highlights from 3 programs, and 1 or 2 test, learn, adapt case studies. All right, so community-based energy efficiency programs. This is, let's see, I talked a lot about this already, so let me just get to the details of this slide. So close partnerships. We create close partnerships with cities, contractors, community organizations, and customers. Why? Because this project really contributes to the goals of the city's climate action plan. We can help them meet their climate action plan. Again, what are the core values that we share? We can show residents how to avoid energy waste and do it with very little cost to themselves. And then we can lead residents through their unique energy journey. And this is with support from our outreach staff, us as activists and leaders. As I mentioned, we leverage their existing social frameworks, and we use behavioral messaging and community-based social marketing combined with our enhanced data tracking system. So we take all 4 of these, the existing residential programs that are out there and the incentives that we're driving people to community-based partnerships and approaches, energy experts and contractors, and advanced data tracking. We combine this into a program and we test, learn, adapt the whole time. Our objectives are to increase customer engagement and uptake in utility programs or city programs or whatever programs are there, and to increase their uptake of conservation behavioral actions. We want to enhance our data tracking to identify and reinforce that next step in the customer journey. And we want to create scalable programs that are cost effective and can scale across a lot of different types of communities. Where does the success of a program start and end? With the people that are involved. So how do you do this? You use individual and social behavior science, where you remember the technology supports the programs, but the people adopt the technology and make the engagement successful. And then data enhances results, but only when it's translated into people-friendly information. Think about the data we get and the struggle that we have with this data on a day-to-day life. Calories. Is that something I really understand? Do I really understand calories? Not really. When you start telling me a serving size, is this the size of the palm of my hand? Ah, okay, that's something that's tangible to me. Kilowatt hours. Do I get kilowatt hours? You know, I study this. I know what a kilowatt hour is, the definition, the rational. But can I look at a device and go, huh, that device just used a kilowatt hour? Or is it smarter to put that into something that I understand? That's 1 hour of lighting that you just wasted. Okay, I can. That's something tangible for me that I can begin to understand. So really translating that data is important. What are our research approaches? Sorry, I hit that button too soon. Our research approaches are to focus on participatory action research, and this is really this continuous test, learn, adapt. This includes quantitative analysis to drive deeper home energy upgrades. We also focus on qualitative analysis of our outreach activities, in-depth interviews, testimonials, surveys, listening in the community to what people are saying and writing all of that down and going back and analyzing it, and our behavioral experiments within the participating communities. We use social behavioral approaches, real-time data collection, frequent analysis, and really quick course correction. When things aren't working, we stop and we course correct. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the basis, the methodology of the strategy that we use. It's called either community-based social marketing, participatory action research, whatever you want to call it. It's a blend of social and individual psychology and behavior change strategies. It's targeted at people who have a reason to care and are ready for change. We're not trying to reach that person who doesn't care at all and is just going to shut us down. We want them to be reached through someone who does care and through their social networks. It works on the installment plan. I think you're all pretty familiar with how behavior change works. First you decide you want to make a change, then first you become aware that you want to make a change, because maybe you're not even aware. Then you decide you want to make a change, then you make the change, and then you have to continuously reinforce that change. It happens on the installment plan. You know, we don't just change like that. We don't change overnight. It takes time. These programs are carried out at the community level, and it involves direct contact with people. We don't just put technology out there and say, there you go. We socially interact with them. So the first step in community-based social marketing, and if you haven't read Fostering Sustainable Behavior, and I hope this is review, please go online to Doug McKenzie Moore's Fostering Sustainable Behavior website. I think it's called CBSM.org, but look it up. You'll find it on Google. Download the Fostering Sustainable Behavior ebook or read it on his website and get to know it. It should be the basis of what you do on a day-to-day basis. So the first step is uncovering the barriers, the benefits, and the potential impacts. And I can't go into details about all this, but any behavior you want people to take, you have to do this. What are the barriers to them doing it? What are the benefits to them doing it? And what are the potential impacts? And those if you want them to make a behavior change, you want to decrease the barriers and increase the benefits. Then you design your pilot or your program based on your findings and the key literature that's out there. You test it. You test it with a small segment of the social community. Then you go back to step 1 and you course correct. What did we learn? What do we need to change? Then you measure and evaluate. You go back through steps 1, 2, 3, and then you measure and evaluate the impact. And finally, you make your recommendations. But don't forget, this feedback is never finished. You're always going back. What are some of the internal tools that we use for innovation? We have a technology platform where we track our customer all the way through all of their energy actions. We do real-time in-field data collection and reporting. We set targets and we compare cost effectiveness of our outreach strategies. We do a lot of behavioral research. I kind of touched upon this already. And we have our program dashboards. These are internal and external dashboards, as well as when we're working with the contractor, it's their pipeline and their scorecards. I'm going to give you an example of action research. And as I already mentioned to you, there are 5 steps to designing community-based social marketing. So in this case, what was happening was people were dropping off their kids in school, and they were idling their car. And it's terrible for the children. They were breathing in all of these fumes, not to mention for climate, right? We shouldn't idle our car. So what were the barriers? Well, people would forget, or maybe they were cold, or they had incorrect beliefs that if they shut down their car, that it would take 3 minutes to have the fuel savings. And so they didn't expect to be there for 3 minutes, which often they were there much longer. Then what are the benefits? Air quality and health for your children. I mean, what more could you ask for? Saving fuel and money. The approach was to describe the barriers and benefits in the first sentence. When they approached, what happened was the outreach staff approached people in their cars, and they described the benefits and barriers in that first sentence. They're like, hey, this is really harmful for your children, but if you turn it off, you can increase not only their health, but the air quality around the school. And then secured a commitment right away. First, then they would talk to the person and find out what they were thinking and address the other benefits and barriers that were there. Then they would secure a commitment. Would you be willing to make a commitment to turn your car off? And then they measured the results. They reduced the frequency of idling by 32% and the duration by 73%. So what happened was then they went and they refined their approach, and then they provided these turnkey toolkits. Sorry, that's a mouthful. Turnkey toolkits. And one of them was the sticker. People were forgetting. So they asked them to put this sticker on their inside windshield that said, turn your engine off for our health. And that's a little girl there. And what this does is it triggers a lot of behavioral levers, from public commitment, because now people can see you're committed to that. Social diffusion, because other people see this and they start saying, oh, I should do this too. It's a trigger or a reminder, and it's a social norm. And then they followed up with regulation. So this regulation was passed in 50 Canadian municipalities. They passed these idle-free laws. I don't know if you've been to Canada, but you can see the signs about it. So it's pretty exciting. All right, so what did we learn? This is one of my slides from my PhD dissertation or defense. And you know, what we basically learned is real-world behavior change is much harder than we expected. When we started the Neighbor-to-Neighbor Energy Challenge, we thought we knew what we were doing, and we went in with program design, and what we found out was it was hard. Households, people have different awareness and readiness. This is their motivation levels. They also have different abilities to take action. Maybe they're just really busy, or they don't have any money. So when you think about a behavior change, I'm going to call this a methodology, a framework that is simple and that you can think about. As I spoke about, you want to raise people's ability to do things. So this is decreasing the benefits. You want to increase their motivation, or the why. This is increasing the ability is decreasing the barriers, and the motivation is increasing the benefits. And as people move up this line of having more and more ability and more motivation, there's an increasing likelihood that they're going to perform the target behavior. And so that's when we come in and engage them with triggers, with our outreach methodologies, our behavioral messaging, and those types of pieces. So a little bit about the Neighbor-to-Neighbor Energy Challenge. This was a program in 14 diverse towns across Connecticut. $4.2 million. It was a 3-year pilot funded by the DOE. Our goal was home upgrades. what did we get? We got 134 signed partners, 7,300 on our email list, and 3,632 upgrades. We had an average energy savings of 17% per household, and a lifetime energy cost savings of $2.14 million per year. This energy savings goes on for 12 years, lifetime savings. So you can see the program paid back in 2 years and then continued to pay results. Just very quickly, the customer journey was to sign up for Neighbor to Neighbor Energy Challenge and then do little steps along the way, from behavior change to change out lighting to do a home energy upgrade to complete a home energy visit and audit to completing upgrades and then eventually getting them to solar. We focused on driving upgrades. I've talked a little bit about objectives at all. How did we do it? Event-based outreach, workshops, door-to-door canvassing, community partner outreach, passive signups like website or through community organizations, and contractor-generated leads. Data, it's essential for research and evaluation. Utilities have very poor and disorganized data collection and reporting, and their data integrity is questionable. So we collected our own data. We created dashboards. We created a data tracking system. We just started tracking what was going on. Let me tell you a little bit about one problem that we had. So on the qualitative front, we found that we weren't sourcing enough leads that intended to go through with the audit. We even found that some were surprised that the audit was their next step and they were scared off. And so to better understand the individual and social characteristics of driving signups and follow-through, we conducted a listening to the voice of the consumer, where we used ethnographic research techniques that included working with the outreach staff to collect raw customer data. This meant recording word for word what customers were saying at tabling events, workshops, and other outreach. We pulled out the most important characteristics. We did a bunch of analysis, and we started figuring out what was going on. This was great because the outreach staff started figuring out what they were doing right and what they were not doing right. We found that people didn't want to say no to these young, enthusiastic outreach staff, but were happy to say no to a contractor. Some people wanted additional information, but we just put them in a queue to get scheduled. Some didn't understand what they signed up for. The outreach staff didn't always know what they were pitching. They didn't constantly set expectations. So what this did was this led us to a number of ways that we increased or refined our pitches and materials. Maybe the two most important things was we started priming people for upgrades. Look, we eventually wanted to get them to upgrade, so asking them to do a home energy audit wasn't enough. We had to get them thinking about the upgrade, where they were going at the end, not at the beginning. We did a lot of staff training, and then we created a sign-up receipt where we simply gave people a little, kind of like when you go to the dentist, a little receipt of, hey, here's the next steps, and here's who's going to be contacting you. Okay, I'm out of time, so there's a lot more slides. I'm going to stop here, Kristen, for a second and ask you if you're getting a ton of questions and if we should stop for Q&A, and I can provide you guys the slides, which I've already shared with you, or if I should keep going.
I have gotten quite a few questions, so depending on if you can definitely take a couple minutes to wrap up any thoughts, or we can stop and take questions now, depending on what you'd like.
Some of this is you can read on your own. Let me quickly touch, I'll just do 2 more minutes, quickly touch on Smart Energy Now, which was the Envision Charlotte program that I alluded to. This was an 18-month engagement in transition from Duke Energy to Envision Charlotte. And this is where we were going to a business community and across all of Uptown Charlotte and getting the goal of office building behavioral energy savings in 2 main behaviors, turning off lights and shutting down computers, and cross-selling utility programs. And the result was that we got a 6% energy savings after 18 months, and long-term, just this last year, they reported 16% energy savings across Uptown Charlotte. So it's pretty exciting. We used a community-wide goal, messaging, and marketing. We made efficiency an organizational priority and incorporated it into company policies and operating procedures, and we leveraged their social networks. And we did this through games, gamifications. We had a couple games Crab Your It game, Adopt a Light game, Flipping Out Lights, a few other games, and we just made it fun for people. I'll share these slides with you. There's notes in them, so you can read the notes about what's in them. And I think I'll close with this last slide because I think this is perhaps the most important for perfecting the pitch. And you can read the other slides if you want. So the first step for perfecting the pitch is assessing the person before you engage. What's their energy level? What are their nonverbal cues? You know, choose to match and mirror what they're doing to build rapport. Find a point of connection. You know, what are their core values? What are their kids doing? These kids are often a great way to start the conversation. Break down the barriers and boost the motivation. So this is key to getting anyone to make any kind of behavior change. Provide them help. Make them feel like you're doing the hard part for them. Like complete the survey with them, but they provide the answers. That's one example. Tell them what the next steps are, and tell them, importantly, where you're trying to get them to, that priming them to the end goal. And help them find something they're already doing to give them a place to build from. The third is get them to take a first step on the spot. So get them to commit right there, right now. What are they doing? If they don't do it now, they won't do it when they get home. This is where small gifts, like an LED bulb, can be used to trigger reciprocity. But be careful how you do that. Reciprocity has some aspects that you really need to incorporate into it, or you'll just be giving them a bulb that they won't ever install. And you want to open the door to get a sign-up, a further commitment, and the steps you want them to take. And finally, remember, a smile is a smile in any language. Doesn't matter what culture or language it is. Be approachable, helpful, and lighthearted. Don't try to oversell. Listen more than you talk. Make energy efficient fun and real with personal examples and stories. You don't have to upgrade everything. Let me tell people that. Start with the rooms you use the most. I still have incandescent bulbs in my spare room closet. I never use that one, so I haven't changed it out. Okay, so I'll stop there, and we'll do some Q&A.
Thank you so much, Kat. So we've got a lot of questions in. Definitely, folks, keep sending them in as they come up. But we'll start with somebody asked if you could talk a little bit more about releasing ownership. I think he said this is something that's a real consideration for many of us working on smaller scale initiatives. So how do you ensure that a sustainable initiative or program continues once you've left, particularly for these folks who are working in a program for 1 year?
Yeah, that's a real challenge. From neighbor to neighbor, we had 14 communities, and I think approximately half of them continued. So the key to that success, and then the other half just floundered. And the key to that success was having real champions, volunteers that were involved in the program mostly from the beginning. And I will tell you, some of these people were the most skeptical. We thought pains in our necks. We're like, oh my gosh, how do we deal with this person? And then those people became our most enthusiastic advocates, because they were able to give their input and really be a part of the program design, and then they were bought in. They had the ownership of it. You know, they were part of building it up. And that's what drives that ownership. So it's getting your volunteers, your municipalities, anyone that's your true energy champions, vested in the cause before you have to leave. And so that involves starting out early, getting them good training, making sure they understand exactly what they're selling, teaching them how to reach other people's core values, and a lot of the stuff in this presentation. So that question could be a whole webinar in itself, but hopefully that starts to address it a little bit.
Great, excellent. So do you have any advice on how to increase the number of contractors willing to take on energy retrofits, which would hit Title 24 requirements?
So what it's a little challenging. It depends on what utility world you're working in, because usually to be eligible for these utility incentives, the contractors need to be approved through the utility, so they have to go through a process. It's a pretty onerous process of getting approval. So one of the things we work on is, and that we're starting to move into, is getting to know the contractors, bringing them together for peer exchange meetings, helping them understand the value we're going to bring in feeding leads to them and why it's important for them to be involved in the utility program and get approval from the utility program. But this is a real challenge. It's the #1 barrier, I think, to energy efficiency, real deep energy efficiency. And it's not something we're going to solve overnight. So it's working with organizations like Efficiency First is a good one, and some of the contractor trade organizations, finding out ways that you can have a fundraising program so that the contractors can get some skin in the game and give away money for people that complete actions so that it becomes this kind of win-win scenario. They're getting quality leads cheaper because they don't have to market to them, and etc. But if you want to understand more about how we engage the contractor network, you should definitely go on the website and download my dissertation. And I don't know if our final report from the Neighbor to Neighbor Energy Challenge is on there, but it might be. If not, I can send that over to you guys.
Great, excellent. The next question is, what's the most effective way to design and conduct surveys to encourage responses, both from consumers but also from local government agencies?
I'm sorry, I'm laughing because I mean that's a whole class. Yeah, it's a whole semester class in that. I think the best thing I can do is try to find a book reference for you guys so that you can dig into that. That's not a question I could answer even in 6 minutes. That's a really detailed question. So let me see if I can find a book that will help with that. I guess if I were just to give you one recommendation, it's to use surveys that already exist out there in the academic literature so that you can compare results and have some kind of comparison. And plus, they've already been vetted for biases, for how you set the scales and the answers and all that kind of stuff. So that would be my one recommendation, is to rely on existing surveys that are out there. And then my second is to read a whole book on it, on the best way to create surveys.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. Next question is, what about lifetime engagement when a contract is time limited? Do programs continue to reach their goals, and is anyone measuring and gathering actionable data at this point?
Yeah, so I mean, it is complicated when you're only doing a 1-year program because it takes a while to build up. You know, I would say 3 years is the minimum that any community-based program should be running, and ideally you want to be in there 4 or 5 years if you're trying to build a real momentum in a community. So it's not a great answer, but I don't think a year is long enough. And so, but you should still be tracking the customers and what they're doing and bringing them back in. So here's the next action, even if you're just doing that through email. Okay, first you did this, now here's the next step you should take. So continuously calling them back into the program. And yes, people are doing this. This is a standard sales technique. You know, if you go into any industry, this is how they do it on a standard basis. For the energy world, you know, this is something that Empower does a lot and that other organizations are starting to do. And we do track all of our data for that.
Great. Next question is, what are some differences we should consider when messaging to community members versus messaging to local governments? Another big question, but.
Yeah, it is, but this one's easier. So you've got to get to their core values. So, you know, thinking about some of the slides I presented, so the municipalities, their core values are meeting their climate action plan goals, helping out their residents in their community, and providing, you know, value add to them. Those are probably the top two. They, you know, if you can focus on what they are, but really listen really listen to what the community wants, then that's important. The same is true for the local organizations and the customer. You listen to what their core values are, and we know a lot of what they are. If you know what organization they are, you can find their core values right on their website. But it's important to sit down and talk to them and let them tell you what they are, so that you can then mirror them back to them and prove to them that you were listening.
Next is, what are some of the different techniques that you employ when you're working with doing outreach with communities that are not native English speakers?
Well, we definitely bring in a volunteer always that speaks that language, and that volunteer should be the one giving the message. So you want your message to come from an in-group or someone that you relate to. So in the case of a non-English speaking community, it's someone who understands their culture and speaks their language and can have a conversation. It's not, I say, and I don't mean this in any way racist, but if I go into a Latino community, well, I'm a white woman, they're not going to listen to me as much as they're going to listen to someone from their own culture. And so it's very important that you find those volunteers. You always want to take a local volunteer to your events, someone that speaks the language and the culture of the local organization, of the local community.
Great. And how can utility companies be encouraged to adapt new technologies faster so that they can better connect their existing customer base?
That's another that's a whole another dissertation. Unfortunately, I do have a 10:30 meeting. I don't think we have a lot of impact in that right now. There's emerging technologies groups at each utility. Utilities are highly regulated in the sense that they need to use proven technologies, and these proven technologies have to meet their energy efficiency goals, and they can't select winners. And so the utilities are pretty blocked in what they can do from a technology standpoint. So I think that's probably not the if I were choosing an avenue for technology diffusion, I wouldn't go to the utility. I would work on finding other avenues for that.
Okay. Well, we don't want to keep you any longer, but thank you so much, Kat, for spending so much time talking with us today. Really appreciated it. Just really great talk. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I'm sorry it wasn't more interactive, and someday we'll do that.
Great. Well, thanks again, and I'll be sending the presentation out to everybody, and I'll be seeing a lot of you at our mid-year gathering in a little under a week. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.